Deep in the New York countryside sits the abandoned Carmichael Manor, empty except for the spirits of dead family members who, some say, still walk its halls. The wealthy family who lived there was suddenly struck with tragedy when a terrible car accident took the life of their oldest daughter, Margaret, and left her brother, Patrick, permanently changed. But fate wasn't done with them yet. One night later that same year, the mother, Eleanor, and daughter, Catherine, were horrifically butchered in their beds. The victims of a grisly murder that was never solved. Strangest of all, the bodies of Patrick and their father, Arthur, were never found, as if they disappeared without a trace, other than a single trail of footprints leading away into the woods. Decades later, a team of amateur paranormal investigators became the first people to ever spend the night in the house since the incident. But that was their biggest mistake. By the end of their trip, none of them would ever be seen again, leaving only these tapes to tell what really happened there that night. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the cursed clown spirits in Hell House, LLC Origins, the Carmichael Manor. These girls are going ghost hunting, but it won't be long before the ghosts are hunting them. We first meet this blogger Margot and her partner Rebecca as they're stopping for lunch on their way to the manor. Although Rebecca here would rather be staying in a hotel, they're gonna spend the next 5 nights as guests within the house itself, a decision that they'll soon come to regret. After arriving at the house, they're given a tour by the host, who shows them through each of the bedrooms, saying that they've all been left exactly as they were when the family had lived there. Oh, and there's a locked mystery room that hasn't been opened since they lost the key several years back. As soon as they're left alone in the house, Margot here decides that she's going to have a look for herself. Somehow, she's actually able to get inside, and what she finds behind those doors would have any rational person sprinting out of there like an Olympic athlete. 2 extremely lifelike clown mannequins, with realistic blood running down their faces and necks, just standing there in the darkness. The girls are understandably creeped out, but before they can investigate further, they're distracted by the arrival of Margot's brother, Chase, who's going to be staying with them. Okay, those clowns may be smiling, but for our amateur investigators here, this is no laughing matter. When it comes to clowns, everything depends on context. At a circus, town fair, or a kid's birthday party, you can safely bet that they're most likely harmless, and maybe even a bit of good old wholesome fun. Seeing a clown pretty much anywhere else, though, is a surefire way to trigger almost anyone's flight or fight response, and there's actually an underlying psychological reason for why we feel this way. The overwhelming fear of clowns, unofficially dubbed chlorophobia, affects countless people around the world, and although not everyone experiences this fear to the point of true phobia, almost all of us might find a clown at least a little bit creepy under the wrong conditions. There have even been real-life cases of killer clowns, like serial killer John Wayne Gacy, so it's not at all surprising that most of us would choose to steer clear if we found 2 of these jokers just chilling up in the attic. But to make matters worse, clowns aren't even the only thing that they have to worry about. They're dealing with ghosts. Hauntings come in all shapes and sizes, but they generally can be boiled down into one of either 2 categories, either intelligent or residual. Starting with residual first, these are some of the most common, and also some of the most harmless. A residual haunting is essentially like a replay of a traumatic event, most often related to a sudden and undeserved death. Intelligent or interactive hauntings are where things start to get really interesting. These can also stem from some traumatic activity in the past, such as a tragic death, or someone who died while feeling like they still had unfinished business here in the mortal realm. As the name suggests, intelligent hauntings know that you're there, you can communicate in a number of ways, and can physically interact with anything from old objects lying around the house to even touching the observer themselves. They're not always dangerous to people, but they definitely can be. So with these types of hauntings, it's best to stay on your toes and be prepared to fight back if it comes to that. If you can somehow figure out why the ghost is still hanging around, then you might be able to help them cross over to the other side. It's also possible that a living family member like the brother Patrick or father Arthur is so emotionally upset by what happened that they can't let go, so finding them and helping them come to terms with what happened could also lift the haunting. If talking it out fails, then you could always try methods like cleansing the house with sage, or bringing in a real professional like a priest or a spiritual healer to get the job done. Now, there is another type of haunting that they could be in for, but this one is probably a bit more than they can chew. We're talking about a demonic haunting. This wouldn't be the spirits of the Carmichaels themselves coming back, but instead, a humane entity that somehow became attached to the family and their home. These types of hauntings start out small, but work their way in by manipulating a very vulnerable person until they quickly become a very serious threat. Once they've gotten in, they can manipulate people and objects with ease. A demon's goal is most often to possess a living person, which means that any of them could be in danger. And since we know that Chase here has been going through tough times lately, I'd keep a close eye on him. Best bet would be to just cut their losses and get out of there, and see a priest once they're back home for some extra insurance. There's also a chance that these reported phenomena could be originating from a cursed object that somehow made its way into the house when the Carmichaels lived there, and has been constantly spreading its negative energy ever since. Personally, my money is on those clown costumes, or if not them, then it's definitely something in that room. They should burn those costumes with fire the second that anything too terrifying starts to go down. Let's also not forget that there are 2 clowns and 2 missing men. This might be unrelated, but that's a bit too much of a coincidence for me. The way I see it, they've got 2 approaches here. Either stop digging and leave, or look through the rest of the stuff in the storage room and hope that you find something useful instead of just making the spirits even more angry. Personally, I'd choose option 1 and just get the hell out of there while I still had the chance. But their curiosity is about to get them into a lot of trouble. As the first night starts, the spirits begin to make their presence known. While discussing theories around the dinner table, Rebecca steps out into the hallway to take a phone call from work, where she notices a closet that was just shut now sitting wide open. It catches her off guard for a moment, but she decides to let it go for now. The girls decide to sleep in Catherine's old room, while Chase takes the master bedroom. Late that night, Margot wakes up after hearing a strange sound and finds Rebecca already standing in the hallway with her camera. She swears that she heard what sounded like a woman singing from downstairs, but now everything is quiet except for the wind howling outside, and there's no sign of anyone else in the house. In the morning, Rebecca films herself changing their sheets, saying that the old ones had a strange smell to them. She finishes up and flips the camera around for a selfie, when all of a sudden, the girl's dead body appears on the bed, turning to look straight at her, but Rebecca never notices her there. After breakfast, she and Margot decide that they're going for a trip to the local antique store, leaving Chase on his own to look out for the ghosts. Before leaving, Margot takes another look through the storage room, where she finds a chest full of stuff from an old carnival game. But Rebecca comes and tells her that they need to get going. With the girls gone, Chase occupies the time by filming himself as he goofs around in the house. But that's when things get really strange. You see, the house is supposed to be empty, but while he's brushing his teeth, he hears the unmistakable sound of something hitting the floor out in the hallway. As he steps towards the bedroom door, his camera briefly glitches out, and in the hall, he finds the source of the noise, a little red ball from the case of old carnival supplies. As if this isn't bad enough, he can hear footsteps down the hall, and sees a human shadow pacing back and forth inside the storage room. Instead of running for his life, Chase inches slowly down the hall until he peeks into the room, but finds nothing inside besides the 2 clowns in exactly the same position where they've always been. Okay, that was unsettling. It looks like things have officially started to go bump in the night, so let's take a look at all of the paranormal activity that they've experienced so far, and see if we can start to put together a bigger picture for what's really going on here. First off, these 3 made quite the ballsy decision by choosing to stay in the exact 2 rooms where the bodies of Catherine and her mother were found. Of course, the only other option here would have been to stay in Patrick and Margaret's rooms, and I don't know if that would have been better or worse. One thing's for sure, If you're looking to see ghosts, then staying in the murder room is a great way to do it. That is why they came here after all, but they should really be careful what they wish for. Chase here is the first person to have actually seen anything that would qualify as paranormal. Now, a ball rolling out into the hallway isn't completely impossible, but shadows moving around on the wall and loud footsteps in a house that's supposed to be empty are a whole different story. That person-sized shadow that seemed to be moving around in the storage room was unmistakable. And if I were Chase, then I'd be taking a good look at those clowns and around that room to see if they have anything to hide. In a house like this, there's a good chance that there could be secret passages, or perhaps there's something off about the clowns themselves besides their obvious pudding appearance. Regardless of whether or not I turned up any hard proof, as soon as I saw what Chase here did, I'd be locking up that room and making sure that I had a decent weapon handy for the rest of my stay, especially wherever I was in the house alone. Personally, I'd say that it's probably time to go home and call it quits, but they're not gonna take the hint until it's too late. Meanwhile, at the antique shop, the girls make a very interesting discovery. The place is full of old items from the local abandoned hotel, which burned down around the same time of the incident at the Carmichael house, including a very interesting looking grandfather clock. Hidden inside, they find some jewelry, old film reels, and a pile of cryptic notes, which Margot quickly tucks into her bag. While they're having a nice time shoplifting, Chase is still fighting his demons back at the house. He's still hearing the unexplainable noises, and somehow, the power to the whole house has just gone out. As he searches the first floor looking for the cause of the problem, he hears a woman's laughter from somewhere behind him, and when he turns to look around, he sees a ghostly hand reaching around the corner. Terrified, he stands there completely frozen in fear as the rest of the spirit emerges. It's a young woman wearing a creepy pale white mask, and she's staring right at him without making a single sound. After a tense moment, the woman retreats back out of sight. Chase gathers his courage and runs into the room, but she vanishes without a trace just as Margot and Rebecca return from their trip. The three of them gather around to have a look at his recording, and for the first time, reality begins to sink in that the stories about the place might actually be true. Okay, things just keep getting worse for our ghost hunters here. Personally, I would have been long gone at this point, but it seems like they're determined to stay. Now that they're reviewing footage, they should at least take a careful look back through everything that they've captured so far to see what they can piece together. One of the first things they'd probably take note of is Rebecca's encounter with the closet opening by itself, which we'll come back to later. Then we have the woman singing from somewhere downstairs in the middle of the night. We know that Margaret here was a performer who died in a car accident on her way home from an audition, so there's a good chance that the mysterious singer is probably her. She seems mostly harmless so far, although a bit creepy for sure. But if she does end up becoming a problem, then they should use what they know about her from when she was alive to get on her good side. For example, Margot and the crew could try saying that they're Hollywood talent agents there to offer her the role of a lifetime, or have a look around her old room to see if they can find any potentially useful objects or information. The next spirit to manifest itself was the ghost of Catherine when she appeared behind Rebecca in her bed. This should go without saying, but I wouldn't sleep in that room for the rest of the trip just to be safe. If Catherine here becomes a threat, then they could also try performing a cleansing ritual on the room, or trying to communicate with her spirit to figure out exactly what she wants. She might not be willing to talk it out since that spirit damn sure didn't look friendly, but you never know. The ball incident and clown shadow that Chase here experienced become even more concerning now that we have a full-blown apparition manifesting in the first floor hallway. By now, it's safe to say that all of the spirits are definitely interested in the people there, but this one can also take a physical form and then disappear into thin air seemingly at will. Since it shows up on the camera, we know that it's more than just a hallucination, and I'd say that this is the first confirmed incident of a real ghost lurking within those halls. So we've got ghosts, that's for sure, but if they're paying attention, they also have a consistent way to detect them before they show up. In every incident so far, the camera seems to glitch out whenever the spirits are about to appear. They can use this to their advantage as a way to locate the spirits within the house, and then either either try to avoid them or investigate them further if they're feeling courageous. If things get dangerous and it turns into a fight, then they could try communicating with the spirits or cleansing them using any of the methods that we've already discussed. With so much ghost activity going on, I'd also be looking into protective rituals that I might perform for myself. There's always the classic circle of salt, which, although the way to set one up isn't exactly common knowledge to most people these days, they do have access to the internet and could look up techniques for themselves if they feel the need to do so. Magical charms have also been said to fend off spirits, and it's possible that the necklace that Rebecca found in the grandfather clock was meant to do exactly that. So I'd keep that thing on me until I was leaving the house, just to be sure. As darkness falls on their second night in the house, the ghost hunters are gathered around the dining room table looking over their findings from the antique store when the power suddenly cuts out. Using the light from their camera, they try finding the breaker box in the front hallway closet, but for some reason they can't seem to get inside. Luckily, the lights come back on, and they decide to ignore it for now. On their way back to the dining room, they discover one of the carnival balls sitting in the middle of the hallway, with no idea how it could have gotten there. Okay, they may not have had any more problems tonight, but there's two things that they should notice here. First, at the very beginning, we saw a scene from a previous documentary on the house where the host was jump scared by something in the front hall closet. Through all of her research, Margot here must definitely have seen that footage, so that closet opening for Rebecca the night before and then being locked tight the next day should set off some red flags in her head. I'd keep trying to find a way in there to see what was on the other side, like a hidden passageway to a secret part of the house, perhaps. Second, one of the notes that they found in the abandoned clock said something very interesting. It said that when they return, the most common side effect is bleeding from the face, calling it a form of hemolacria, which basically means to cry tears of blood. And who have we seen with blood on their faces? That's right, the clowns. If we need any more proof that those clowns have something creepy going on, this is definitely it. I'd be sure to take a close look at those clowns for any signs that they could actually be alive, and definitely find a way to restrain them and lock them in that room so they couldn't easily get the jump on us later. The next morning, Rebecca has to give a video presentation to her boss. It starts out normal enough, but she quickly realizes that her computer is full of photos from inside the manor that Rebecca definitely didn't take. The photos move down the main hall, up the stairway, and eventually come to the doorway right behind her, where Rebecca herself can be seen sitting at the desk. Terrified, she slowly turns to look, but there's no sign of anyone there. As the photos get closer, she sees a girl standing next to her looking out of the bedroom window. The final image shows the girl staring straight at her with empty black eyes and a scarred face, before the call suddenly cuts out, revealing three mysterious cloaked figures standing in the background of her desktop. Rebecca here has officially had enough, insisting that they need to get out of there now. Margot, on the other hand, says that finding ghosts was the whole point of their trip, and they can't just leave now that things are starting to get real. After an off-camera discussion, she convinces them to stay for just one more night, but the truth is that she should have listened to Rebecca while they still had the chance. That night, Margot finds herself a picture from the old hotel clock, showing the same two clowns and carnival game that are upstairs in the storage room, meaning that the house and hotel must be somehow connected. Although, for some reason, Rebecca seems to remember there being 3 mannequins and not just 2. Just then, the service buzzer in the kitchen starts to ring, and they realize that the call is coming from Patrick's bedroom. The crew springs into action, with Rebecca staying behind in the kitchen, while Margot and Chase go to check it out. Upstairs, they notice that the light is on in the bedroom, and when they turn the corner, they see the sad-faced clown standing there staring right at them. Confused, Chase here does the only logical thing and begins slowly walking towards it. But when he reaches out his hand to touch it, the clown remains perfectly still. It definitely seems to be a mannequin, but there's still no way to explain how it got there. Downstairs, Rebecca hears a door slowly creep open. It's the front hall closet that they couldn't get into before, but as she gets closer, a red ball rolls out and comes to a stop at her feet. She goes to the pitch-dark closet and turns on the lights, revealing the bloody-faced clown standing there in the shadows. When the other two run to help her, the clown has somehow moved and is now looking out into the hallway. Terrified, Rebecca begs them to leave, but the footage suddenly cuts out. Okay, it seems like for every night that passes, there's even more red flags that they're just choosing to ignore. And these have to be the worst of all. When they first got there, the kitchen buzzer definitely didn't work, but now that it's started back up again, this probably means one of two things. Either it's something paranormal or someone playing a weird prank, and neither of those options are good. But that's not even the worst part. It looks like the two clowns from upstairs have decided to take a stroll around the house while nobody was looking, and there is absolutely no way that this should be possible unless either some deranged prankster is moving them around or they're alive. At this point, staying 5 more minutes in this creepy-ass manor would have been completely off the table for me. But if they're still refusing to leave, then they should at least put something like some flour on the floor at night so that they'll be able to see footprints from anyone or anything that's sneaking around. I'd also once again suggest that they check each room for any secret passages that someone could be using to get in or out, because in a house like this, you're almost guaranteed to find one somewhere. Although I'd be setting those clowns on fire by now. If they aren't ready to take such drastic measures, then they really should at least put them back in the storage room. Find a way to lock that door and even tie them up with some rope or sheets. Of course, I'd also be keeping a weapon close by just in case. We don't know if they're vulnerable to physical attacks yet, but I'd rather be prepared than not. For the rest of this trip, these three should always stick together and never split up. That way, you'll always have someone around to help keep you guarded if the ghosts start playing mind games, and a handy meat shield in the worst case scenario. One thing to consider is that these spirits may become more powerful as you become more afraid, so it's best to try and keep your cool, as difficult as that's going to be. Easier said than done, I know, but if they aren't going to do the smartest thing of all and just get out of there, then they need to make the most of any of the advantages that they have. Somehow, these idiots still can't take the hint and decide to stay the rest of the night. In the morning, Margot is horrified to discover a bag full of Chase's stuff placed right outside of their bedroom door, and Chase himself is nowhere to be found. They quickly rush over to his room, but there's no trace of him anywhere or signs of a struggle, with his phone lying next to the bed as if he disappeared in the middle of the night. The girls are left without any answers, but the video footage recovered from Chase's camera after the incident shows what really happened to him that night. It turns out that Chase was trying to drink himself to sleep when he heard several harsh knocks on his bedroom door. Each time that he'd get up to go check, there was no one out in the hall, but the knocking only continued, driving him to the point of exhaustion. After finally falling asleep, Chase woke up to the sound of something opening his bedroom door, and when he turned on the lights, he saw the most horrifying thing imaginable: a bloody-faced clown, dressed differently from the others, standing at the foot of his bed. Terrified, Chase left his things and made a break for the door as the clown slowly turned to follow him. He was only able to get as far as the storage room before he turned to see the clown closing in, and that's the last time that he was seen alive. Okay, man, I feel really bad for this guy. Poor Chase here probably had no idea what he was getting himself into, but now he's just become another victim of the evil spirits that lurk in the manor. There's only one person to blame. Margot, you f***ed up! First off, who brings the 3 people they care about the most into a house that's supposed to be haunted by evil spirits anyway? That's just asking for trouble. Not to mention that her brother was already struggling and on medication as it is. This might come as a shock to her, but a murder house isn't exactly the best place to bring people who you want to stay healthy and sane. Seriously, just hire some unpaid interns next time. That way you won't feel as bad about using them as meat shields if that's what it comes down to. The warning signs were stacking up non-stop, but she chose to ignore every single one. Worst of all is that both Rebecca and Chase have wanted to leave pretty much everything since they got there. But Margot here kept convincing them to stay for one more night, and now it looks like at least Chase is going to be staying forever. Her own brother is gone, and this maniac is still so stubborn that he's about to stick around and hope that he comes back, instead of getting the hell out of there, which would not only get Rebecca to safety, but possibly even mean that she could send back some help for Chase. It's better if 2 of you live instead of all 3 of you ending up dead, but things are only going to get so much worse from here, and it's all her fault. Margot, you f***ed up. Margot searches the property for any sign of her brother, but Rebecca here wants to leave without him, afraid that they'll be next if they stick around. Margot begs her to stay just a bit longer to give him a chance, and they finally agree to wait until it's almost sundown for him to show back up. The footage then briefly cuts to an interview with the documentarians, where they explain how back in the 60s, a man named Andrew Tully tragically lost his daughter and became obsessed with bringing her back. While on the run from the law, he met the 2 clowns at a fair in West Virginia, and the 3 of them eventually moved to New York, where they started a cult. They opened up the Abaddon Hotel as a cover business, hiring locals to work there, and one of those locals was none other than Patrick Carmichael himself. Sunset falls on the manor, and there's still no sign of Chase anywhere. With night closing in, Rebecca tells Margot that time is up, and she reluctantly agrees to get some help once they're safely back in town. But there is a problem. Just when she thinks that they're finally getting out of there, Rebecca discovers that their car will not start. This leaves the girls with one of 2 options. Either trek the 12 miles back to the main road through the unfamiliar forest and hope that they make it before sundown, or get ready to spend another night and hope that they survive until the next morning. Neither choice is looking good, but they eventually choose to take the walk, never suspecting the horrifying things that are waiting for them out in those woods. Okay, finally they're getting out of there like they should have done all along. A bit late if you ask me, but hey, better now than never. It's not going to be any help if they just end up getting lost in the woods though. Before setting out, they should take a minute to prepare themselves. There's no time to waste, but going out into the woods with nothing but hopes and dreams is going to be just as dangerous as staying. The girls should quickly gather any water, warm clothes, snacks, and lights that they can carry reasonably well, and a lighter or something else that they might use to start a fire if they end up needing to do so. Of course, I'd also make sure that I was packing a weapon just in case they run into any trouble out there. Above all, they need to stick together and remain calm no matter what happens because of how easy it's going to be to get lost. They also need to make a choice about whether to stay quiet to avoid detection or walk around yelling for help once in a while, on the chance that a hunter or hiker might hear them. Personally, I'd try to get attention from outsiders if I could, because whatever's after them is probably already aware of their every move as it is. The girls start hiking back towards civilization, and at first, things seem to be going well enough. Feeling optimistic, Margot turns to the camera and says that she thinks that they're going to make it. Suddenly, they begin hearing noises in the woods around them that sound exactly like a woman screaming, which they both agree is most likely not a good sign. That's when Rebecca's fight or flight kicks in, and she says that she wants to make a run for it. But Margot here hilariously declares that there's absolutely no way that they could possibly run a whole 9 miles. And so they settle on speed walking out of there instead to save their energy. Things are looking pretty bad for the girls here, but at least they're able to keep moving towards safety. That is, until they see 2 cloaked figures blocking the path ahead of them. Now the girls decide to run, and Rebecca here only makes it about 50 feet before she decides that she's just too exhausted to go on. But Margot quickly reminds her that there are cultists currently trying to sacrifice them to their evil clown god, which seems to put the pep back in her step. With their survival instincts kicking into high gear, the girls head for the safest place of all, straight back to the murder house where this whole nightmare started. Sprinting inside, they rush back up to their bedroom and decide that the best course of action now is to sit on the floor and do absolutely nothing. Sometime later, their cell phone service finally comes back, and Margot sees that she has a single text from Chase, simply reading "Hi." Although there's no way that this should be possible, since they left the phone in his bedroom. Margot is about to go and look for him, but Rebecca stops her at the last second, saying that they should text back instead. To their surprise, Chase responds, but what he says is not good. Apparently, He made some new friends while he's been gone, and now they want to meet the girls. The implications of this are obvious. It's the clown demons, no doubt about it. So Margot here does what anyone would do in this situation and invites them to come to their room. Rebecca wisely points out that this probably is not a good idea, but by then it's already too late, and Chase says that they're on their way. Just then, the girls hear a door open somewhere on the second floor, and the sounds of footsteps coming down the hallway that stop right outside of their bedroom. For a moment, there's silence, and then a knock at the door. Death Wish Margot here decides that she's going to answer, and as she inches closer, the door suddenly opens on its own. But there's nothing out there besides a single red ball. Confused, she begins to look around until she gets a text from Chase, and it says that they're in the room now. Well, that's enough for Rebecca here, who sprints for the front door and decides to hide out in the backseat of their car. The tape is then intercut by footage from the Carmichaels, showing Patrick returning home late one October night with a bloody mask, claiming to have spent some time in jail. His sister Catherine goes to confront him about what happened at the hotel. That same night, the cult members ended things for themselves before the entire place mysteriously burned down. Patrick says that he was supposed to be there, telling his sister that the cult members aren't dead, they've just crossed over. Just then, she hears a girl's laughter from somewhere in the room and decides that she better just leave. She makes it to the hallway, but when she turns around, she sees the reanimated body of her sister Margaret standing behind her and lets out a blood-curdling scream as the lights suddenly go out. The next thing that we see of her, Catherine is in her bedroom crying, saying that they're in the house. As she peeks out through her bedroom door, she sees a cloaked figure pass by at the end of the hallway. Terrified, she runs to hide in her closet, where she finds her sister's corpse slumped over in the corner. Catherine screams as the body lunges towards her, and with that, the tape abruptly ends. Now we cut back to Margot and Rebecca. They've been sleeping out in the car for an unknown amount of time when the alarm begins to go off, and they see two cultists standing in the driveway just a few yards ahead. Another haunting scream echoes through the forest as the girls sprint back into the house and up to their bedroom. Suddenly, Margot hears her brother calling out to her from somewhere in the house, and he's begging for help. Rebecca tries to stop her, correctly pointing out that the voice is most likely not her brother at all, but Margot desperately wants to believe that it's really him, and decides to go anyway just as Rebecca finally manages to contact the police. Okay, this is their last chance, but Rebecca is the only one thinking rationally here. Margot, on the other hand, is acting like a total idiot. Her brother is 100% gone, but even if he isn't, now that they've called the police, help should be on the way. It's gonna be a while, but all that they need to do is hold out until the officers get there. My advice? Barricade themselves in that room and get ready to fight for their lives. They should grab anything that they can use for weapons against these cultists and clowns who may be vulnerable to physical attack, and try an on-the-spot protective ritual or prayer to keep them safe from Catherine's ghost if she shows up. Whatever happens next, they should all stick together at all costs and help each other get through any mind games that the spirits might try. Their car might not start, but the battery still works, so setting off its alarm with her keys might scare away the cultists and help lead the cops to you. It's not much, but it's better than nothing, and they need every advantage possible if they're going to survive. Alone in the bedroom, Rebecca hears a noise from the corner, but sees nothing there when she looks. Turning around, she finds Catherine lying on the bed with her face horrifically disfigured, and the spirit lunges straight for her. Rebecca screams as the lights go out, switching on the light from the camera. For a moment, it looks like the body has disappeared, but when she turns around, there's Catherine standing right behind her. The spirit closes in, and that's the end for Rebecca here. Meanwhile, Margot runs to Chase's room and actually finds him sitting at the desk. Whatever happened to him out there, he's now leaking blood from his eyes and mouth, and something tells Margot that she better get out of there. Terrified, Margot sprints back to their bedroom, only to find out that the door is locked, and Rebecca is not answering. She goes for the stairs, but she's cut off by the mysterious third clown, leaving her no place to run but back up to the second floor. This time, she sees the door to Patrick's room glowing like a red portal to the underworld, so she makes a quick about face and takes off down the long hallway. She doesn't make it far before she stumbles and falls though, and when she looks behind her, the clown is closing in. Powerless to fight back, she flips the camera around for one last selfie, just as the clown jams his fingers into her eye sockets. And just like that, her ghost hunting days are officially over. As the film comes to an end, the documentarians reveal that Margot had actually encountered the clown before, at a fair in West Virginia, where a man had attempted to lure her away to be kidnapped, and several other children had gone missing. The recording cuts to a final scene of Patrick tearfully apologizing for what he'd done, saying that it was all to serve an unknown dark entity, before putting on his clown mask and walking away into the strange red light. Finally, we see footage of the documentarian one last time, and when she gets up to finish the recording, one of the clowns has been watching through the window. It looks like whatever dark ritual these freaks were up to, it's not quite over yet. I mean, what did you guys think was gonna happen? You hear that the house is haunted, you go to the house, it's haunted, motherfuckers are getting picked off. It never ends, you know? Horror movies, keep on horror movieing. But what would you do? Okay, you hear that a house is haunted, you go to the house, surprise, it's haunted. Okay, but this is getting a little bit more serious though, because if I was supposed to be here by myself and people are like running around in the middle of the night, you best believe I'm pulling the blicky out. But let us know what you would do down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. We'll see you guys in the next video, and have a damn good day.